After 5 years building the company, my wife's father promoted his 26-year-old nephew who'd been there 3 months. I clapped and smiled. Congrats, Jack. Next morning I walked into his office with an envelope. When he read my resignation letter, his face went white. Is this a joke? He yelled. My name is Marcus Hayes and I'm 44 years old, standing in this sterile conference room that smells like burnt coffee and disappointment, clapping my hands together like some trained seal while my whole damn world crumbles around me. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, casting that sickly yellow glow that makes everyone look like they're dying. And maybe that's fitting because something inside me sure as hell is. Jack Monroe, my wife's cousin, this 26-year-old kid who still asks me how to work the copy machine, just got announced as our new regional director. 3 months. The bastard's been here exactly 3 months. And now he's got the corner office with the view of downtown while I'm still crammed into that shoe box next to the supply closet. 5 years I've been busting my ass for this company. Building their logistics network from the ground up. Staying late, coming in on weekends, missing Sophia's soccer games because the shipment from Phoenix needs to be tracked personally. Charles Alden, my father-in-law, stands at the head of that polished conference table like he's announcing the second coming instead of promoting his nephew over the guy who actually knows what the hell he's doing. His silver hair is perfectly styled. His suit probably costs more than I make in a month. And that smile, God, that smile makes me want to punch something. Jack brings fresh energy to our team. He's saying, his voice all smooth and practiced like he's giving a speech at the country club. New perspectives, innovative thinking, the kind of forward momentum that'll take Alden Ventures to the next level. Fresh energy, right? The kid can barely manage his email without calling me over to explain why his computer is acting weird when really he just forgot his password again. But there he sits, grinning like he won the lottery. Probably already planning how he's going to redecorate my office. Excuse me, his office now. The one I helped design when we expanded last year. The one where I spent countless hours developing the supply chain protocols that made this company profitable. I'm still clapping, my palms starting to sting. And I catch sight of Janet from accounting, giving me this look. Half pity, half I told you so. She's been warning me for months that something like this was coming. But I kept thinking Charles would do the right thing. Family or not, merit matters, right? Apparently, I was wrong. Dead wrong. The thing that really gets me is how they're all looking at me, waiting to see if I'm going to crack, if I'm going to make a scene. My coworkers, people I've worked alongside for years, they know this is, they know I should be sitting where Jack is, but they're all scared for their own jobs, so they keep clapping and nodding like puppets on strings. Can't blame them, really. We've all got mortgages to pay. I know you'll all give Jack the same support you've given me over the years, Charles continues. And I swear to God, the irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Support? I've been carrying this company's logistics department single-handedly while he plays golf with clients and takes 3-hour lunches, but sure, let's talk about support. Jack stands up, skinny kid, nervous energy, probably still shopping in the boys section, and clears his throat. Thanks everyone. I'm really excited to work with such a talented team. His voice cracks a little on talented, and I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Then I remember that he's about to be making twice what I make while I train him how to do the job I should have gotten. The meeting's winding down now. People starting to file out, murmuring their congratulations and making plans for lunch. I should leave. I should walk out of here and go back to my desk and pretend like this is normal. Like this is just how business works. But my feet feel like they're glued to the industrial carpet. And there's this pressure in my chest like someone's sitting on my rib cage. Charles is shaking hands with Jack, probably giving him some wise grandfather advice about leadership and responsibility. And I want to laugh because the only thing Jack's going to be leading is this company straight into the ground. But I don't laugh. Instead, I walk over to them, extend my hand to Jack, and say the words that taste like sawdust in my mouth. Congratulations, Jack. Really well deserved. The lie comes out smooth as silk, and Jack pumps my hand like we're old friends. His palms sweaty and uncertain. Thanks, Marcus. I'm really going to need your help getting up to speed. Of course, he is. Of course, I'm going to be the one training my own replacement, showing him the ropes, explaining how everything works while he gets the title and the salary and the respect that should have been mine. Absolutely, I hear myself saying, still wearing that fake smile that's starting to make my face hurt. Whatever you need. Charles beams at this little exchange, probably thinking he's handled this transition beautifully, that he's managed to keep everyone happy. He has no idea that something fundamental just shifted in this room, that the loyal son-in-law he's been taking for granted just realized exactly where he stands in the pecking order. As I finally make it back to my desk, my hands are shaking slightly, and I can't tell if it's from anger or something else entirely. Maybe it's relief. Maybe it's the first time in 5 years I'm seeing this place clearly without the rose-colored glasses of hoping things would eventually work out fairly. The fluorescent light above my desk flickers and buzzes just like always. But somehow it sounds different now, like a warning bell or maybe like time running out. I sit down in my chair, stare at my computer screen, and for the first time since I started working here, I know with absolute certainty that I'm done. You know what's funny about betrayal? It doesn't happen all at once like in the movies. It's not some dramatic moment where the villain twirls his mustache and reveals his master plan. No, it creeps up on you like carbon monoxide. Odorless, colorless, and by the time you realize what's happening, you're already half dead. 6 months ago, I was sitting in my cubicle working on the quarterly logistics report when Charles strolled over with his coffee mug, the one that says "World's Greatest Grandpa" that Sophia gave him last Christmas. Back then, I still thought family meant something to him beyond just blood relations and tax benefits. "Hey, Marcus," he said, settling that fake casual tone he uses when he's about to drop something on you. "I wanted to run something by you. My nephew Jack, Belle's cousin. You remember him from the wedding? He's finishing up his MBA at Wharton. Bright kid, really sharp. I'm thinking about bringing him in for a summer internship. Maybe let him see how the business world works." An internship. That's what he called it. I should have known right then that Charles Alden doesn't do anything small, doesn't make casual decisions about family members. But I was focused on the Morrison account that was going sideways, trying to figure out why our shipping costs had spiked 30% in 2 weeks. So I just nodded and said something like, "Sure, sounds good. Always happy to help out family." Family Christ, I actually used that word with a straight face. 3 weeks later, Jack Monroe walked through our front doors wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car payment, carrying a leather briefcase that still had the price tag tucked inside the handle. I watched him from my desk as Charles gave him the grand tour, introducing him to everyone like he was visiting royalty instead of some college kid who'd never worked a real day in his life. But here's the thing that should have set off every alarm bell in my head. Charles didn't just stick Jack in some corner with a stack of filing or make him fetch coffee like every other intern in the history of corporate America. No, Jack got an office. Not a big one, but an office with a door and a window and his name on a little placard that read Jack Monroe. Management trainee. Management trainee. Not intern. Not summer help. Management_trainee. And where was this office located? Right next to Charles's corner suite. Close enough that they could chat through their open doors about golf handicaps and stock portfolios while the rest of us worker bees buzzed around trying to keep the company running. I trained him because that's what you do when you're a professional. When you still believe in doing the right thing even when your gut is screaming that something's off. Jack was eager enough. I'll give him that. He asked a million questions, took notes on everything. Stayed late sometimes trying to understand how our vendor relationships worked. Part of me even liked the kid. He reminded me of myself when I first started. All ambition and energy and hope that hard work actually meant something. But I started noticing things. Little things at first, like how Charles would call Jack into closed-door meetings that could have been emails. How Jack suddenly knew details about upcoming contracts that I hadn't been briefed on yet. How he'd casually mention conversations with department heads that happened when I wasn't around. The real wake-up call came about 2 months into Jack's internship. I was working late, trying to sort out a mess with our Phoenix distributor when I heard voices coming from Charles's office. The door was cracked open just enough that I could see them sitting across from each other. Charles behind his massive oak desk and Jack in one of those expensive leather chairs that probably cost more than most people make in a week. Marcus is dependable. Charles was saying, his voice carrying that tone he uses when he's explaining something to a child. He knows the systems inside and out. Understands our clients. Keeps everything running smooth. But Marcus doesn't have the credentials, doesn't have the vision for where this company needs to go. He's blue-collar smart, not boardroom smart. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I kept listening. You've got the degree, Jack, MBA from Wharton. That opens doors that Marcus' experience never will. And more importantly, your family. This company's been in the Alden name for 3 generations. I need someone I can trust completely. Someone who understands that loyalty goes both ways. Jack's voice was quieter, harder to hear, but I caught enough. What about Marcus? He's family, too, isn't he? Married to Belle and all. Charles laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that makes your skin crawl. Marriage is just paperwork, son. Blood is forever. Marcus is useful, don't get me wrong. He'll make an excellent number 2, perfect for handling the day-to-day operations while you focus on strategy and growth. Number 2. After 5 years of building this place from the ground up, after missing family dinners and weekend barbecues and my daughter's school plays, I was going to be the number two to a kid who didn't know the difference between a bill of lading and a packing slip. That's when it all clicked into place. Like puzzle pieces falling into a picture I didn't want to see. This wasn't about Jack learning the business or getting some real-world experience before heading off to his daddy's law firm or whatever. This was about Charles grooming his replacement, and I was just the hired help who'd been stupid enough to think that marrying into the family meant I was actually part of it. I crept back to my desk, grabbed my jacket, and drove home in silence while my brain tried to process what I just heard. Belle was already asleep when I got there, and I sat in my kitchen drinking a beer and staring at the photos on our refrigerator. Sophia at her last soccer game. The three of us at Disney World 2 summers ago, Charles and his wife at our wedding, all smiles and promises about family sticking together. I wasn't being overlooked for the promotion I deserved. I was being used, plain and simple, kept around just long enough to train my replacement and make sure the transition went smoothly. And the worst part, I'd been grateful for the opportunity. Belle always had this way of cutting through with surgical precision. Like she could see right through all the excuses and rationalizations I'd built up over the years. We'd been married for 18 years. And in that time, she'd watch me take hits that would have sent most guys straight to HR or out the door looking for a new job. But not me. Never me. You let people walk over you, Marcus. She'd said about 6 months ago, standing in our kitchen with that look she gets when she's trying to decide whether to hug me or shake some sense into me. We'd just gotten back from one of Charles's dinner parties. You know, the kind where he invites all the department heads and their spouses over to his mansion so we can pretend we're all one big happy family while he reminds everyone exactly who signs the paychecks. That particular night, Charles had spent 20 minutes telling everyone about Jack's brilliant insights during his first week, how the kid was already identifying inefficiencies that us old-timers had missed. I'd sat there nodding and smiling like a good little employee while my wife watched me swallow my pride with my overpriced steak. I don't let people walk over me. I told her, loading the dishwasher with more force than necessary. I'm being professional. There's a difference. She'd given me that look. The one that said she loved me but thought I was being an idiot. Professional is one thing, honey. Being a doormat is something else entirely. When was the last time you stood up for yourself at that place? Really stood up, not just complained about it to me later. I couldn't answer her then because she was right and we both knew it. I'd built a career out of keeping my head down, doing the work, believing that eventually someone would notice and reward all that quiet dedication. But quiet dedication doesn't get you promoted when the boss's nephew needs a job, does it? Now, here I am, 3 days after watching Jack get handed my future on a silver platter, lying in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, staring at the ceiling fan that's been making that weird clicking noise for 6 months. But I keep forgetting to fix. Belle's asleep next to me, breathing soft and steady, and I'm thinking about what she said, about being a doormat, about standing up for myself. The worst part is thinking about Sophia. My daughter's 16 now. All legs and attitude and dreams about becoming a marine biologist because she wants to save the ocean or some equally impossible and beautiful thing that only teenagers can believe in completely. She looks at me like I'm Superman, like I've got all the answers and the world makes sense because Dad's got everything under control. What kind of example am I setting for her? What am I teaching my daughter about self-respect and standing up for what's right when I can't even stand up for myself in my own workplace? She's been asking me about college lately, talking about applications and scholarships. And I keep telling her the same thing I've been saying since she was old enough to understand. Work hard, be honest, treat people right, and good things will happen. But that's a lie, isn't it? I've been working hard for 5 years, been honest to a fault, treated everyone with respect. And what did it get me? A front row seat to watching some kid who doesn't know Jack, about logistics get handed the job I've been earning one day at a time. How can I look Sophia in the eye and keep feeding her that line about hard work paying off when I'm living proof that sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you work or how good you are at your job? Sometimes what matters is whose DNA you share and whether you went to the right school with the right people. But here's the thing that's really eating at me. I'm not just angry about the promotion anymore. I'm angry at myself for being surprised, for being naive enough to think that family meant I was safe, that loyalty was a two-way street in the Alden household. I'm angry that I've spent so many years making excuses for Charles's behavior, telling myself he was just a demanding boss when really he was just an with a trust fund. And I'm scared. Scared of what happens next. Scared of walking away from the only job I've had since college. Scared of starting over at 44 with a mortgage and a kid who's counting on me to pay for her education. It's easy to talk tough when you're young and stupid and don't have anything to lose. It's a lot harder when you've got responsibilities and people depending on you. But you know what scares me more than starting over? The idea of staying put, of spending the next 20 years training other people's kids to be my boss, of watching Sophia grow up thinking her dad's okay with being treated like garbage as long as the paycheck clears. Belle shifts next to me, making that little sound she makes when she's dreaming, and I think about waking her up, telling her what I'm thinking about doing, but I already know what she'd say. She'd tell me she's proud of me for finally growing a backbone. She'd probably say she's been waiting years for me to get mad enough to do something about it. The ceiling fan keeps clicking and somewhere in the distance, I can hear a train whistle. Probably the freight line that runs behind the industrial park where our warehouse is located. I've heard that sound 1,000 times driving to work. But tonight, it sounds different. Tonight it sounds like it's calling me somewhere else, somewhere better. I reach over to my nightstand and grab my phone, opening up my notes app. My fingers hover over the keyboard for a second and then I start typing. Dear Charles, please accept this letter as my formal resignation from Alden Ventures effective 2 weeks from today's date. My mistake to make, right? Well, maybe it's time I started making some mistakes that actually matter. Friday morning came like a reckoning. Gray and cold with that kind of drizzle that makes everything look depressing as hell. I'd been carrying that resignation letter in my jacket pocket for 3 days, folded up neat and clean in a white envelope with Charles's name written across the front in my best handwriting. Every time I reached for it, every time I thought about walking into his office and ending this charade once and for all, I'd chicken it out and tell myself I needed more time to think it through. But Thursday night changed everything. I'd gotten home from another soul-crushing day of watching Jack fumble through basic spreadsheets while everyone praised his fresh perspective and Sophia was at the kitchen table doing her homework. She looked up when I walked in and I swear to God I saw something in her eyes that made my chest tight. Pity. My own daughter was looking at me with pity. Dad, she'd said closing her chemistry textbook. Are you okay? You seem really tired lately. Tired? Jesus. I wasn't tired. I was dying inside, one small humiliation at a time, and my 16-year-old daughter could see it written all over my face. That's when I knew I couldn't wait another day. Couldn't spend another weekend rehearsing speeches in my head or making excuses about why Monday would be better. So, here I am standing outside Charles's office at 9:47 a.m. listening to him talk on the phone about his golf game last weekend while I work up the courage to knock. Through the glass, I can see him leaning back in that leather chair that probably costs more than most people's cars. Feet up on his desk, laughing at something whoever he's talking to just said. This is the man who's been playing puppet master with my life, treating me like some kind of employee. He can move around the board however he sees fit. I knock 3 times, sharp and professional, and he waves me in without even looking up from his conversation. Hold on, Jim. He says into the phone, then covers the mouthpiece with his hand. What's up, Marcus? Make it quick. I've got the mayor on the line. The mayor? Of course he does. Charles Alden doesn't just run a logistics company. He runs half the city council and probably has the fire chief's direct number saved in his contacts. That's the world I've been trying to belong to for 5 years. The world where connections matter more than competence and family names open doors that merit can't even find. I need to give you something, I say, pulling the envelope from my jacket pocket. It feels heavier than paper should, weighted down with all the words I've been too scared to say out loud. What's this? He asks, still holding the phone. And I can hear Jim, whoever he is, asking if everything's all right on the other end. Charles sets the phone down without hanging up and takes the envelope, turning it over in his hands like he's never seen one before. When he opens it and starts reading, I watch his face go through this whole transformation. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something that looks almost like panic before settling into anger. Is this a joke? He shouts loud enough that I'm pretty sure half the office can hear him through the glass walls. The phone is still off the hook and I can hear Jim's tiny voice asking what's going on, but Charles ignores him completely. You're quitting because Jack got promoted. There it is. The question that reduces 5 years of dedication and expertise down to petty jealousy. Like I'm some kind of spoiled child throwing a tantrum because someone else got the toy I wanted. But I'm not going to let him frame this his way. Not this time. I've made my decision, Charles. I say, keeping my voice level and professional, even though my heart's hammering against my ribs. 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately. He stands up so fast his chair spins backward and hits the credenza behind his desk, sending his golf trophies rattling. 2 weeks. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Do you have any idea what this will do to operations? We've got the Morrison contract renewal next month, the Phoenix expansion project, the quarterly review with corporate. I'm sure Jack can handle it. I interrupt, and the look on his face is almost worth the 5 years of frustration I've been swallowing. After all, he's got that MBA from Wharton. Fresh perspective, innovative thinking, all that. Charles's face is getting redder by the second, and I can see that vein in his forehead starting to bulge the way it does when suppliers are late with deliveries. What about Belle? What about Sophia? You're walking away from your family. And there it is. The guilt trip I've been expecting. The emotional manipulation disguised as concern. He's going to make this about family loyalty, about responsibility, about everything except the fact that he chose his nephew over his son-in-law and expected me to smile and take it. No, Charles, I say. And for the first time in 5 years, I'm smiling at him without having to force it. I'm walking away from you. The words hang in the air between us like smoke. And I can see him processing what I just said, trying to figure out his next move. Behind him, Jim's voice is still coming through the phone, asking if he should call back later, but Charles doesn't seem to hear him anymore. This is it. The moment I've been building towards since that night. I overheard him talking about blood being thicker than marriage licenses. This is me finally standing up. Finally saying, enough is enough. Finally choosing my own dignity over a paycheck. I turn to walk out, but Charles isn't done yet. You'll never get a reference from me. He calls after me, his voice cracking slightly like he's not used to people walking away from him mid-con conversation. I stop at his door and look back at him. This man who married off his daughter to secure a loyal employee who spent 5 years taking credit for my work while keeping me just grateful enough to stick around. I won't need one, I tell him. And this time when I walk away, I don't look back. Charles thought he was calling my bluff, sitting there behind his overpriced desk with that smug look he gets when he thinks he's got all the cards. You'll never get a reference from me, he'd said, like that was supposed to send me crawling back with my tail between my legs, begging for forgiveness and promising to be a good little employee who knows his place. What Charles doesn't understand, what he's never understood, is that this industry isn't as big as people think. Logistics and supply chain management might sound fancy and corporate, but at the end of the day, it's still a small world where everybody knows everybody, where your reputation travels faster than gossip at a church potluck. I've been smart about this, smarter than Charles gave me credit for. While he was busy grooming his golden boy nephew and planning my professional funeral, I'd been quietly updating my resume, reaching out to old contacts, testing the waters to see what was out there for a guy like me. Not because I was planning to leave. Hell, 2 weeks ago, I was still hoping things might work out, but because Belle had drilled it into my head that I needed to have options. Never put all your eggs in one basket, she'd said after another one of those dinner parties where I came home feeling like I'd been kicked in the teeth. Especially when the basket belongs to someone who doesn't respect you. The first person I reached out to was Olive Brooks at Horizon Tech. Olive and I had worked together about 7 years ago when she was still climbing the corporate ladder at Morrison Industries back before she jumped ship to become managing director at one of the fastest growing logistics companies in the Southwest. She's tough as nails, smart as hell, and doesn't give a damn about your pedigree if you can get the job done. I'd sent her a casual email 3 weeks ago. Nothing formal, just a hey, how are things going? Would love to catch up over coffee sometime kind of message. She'd responded the same day, which should have told me something right there. Marcus, great to hear from you. I've been following your work at Alden Ventures through the industry reports. Impressive stuff with the Phoenix distribution network. Let's definitely grab lunch soon. Then there was Rudy Marlowe at Westline Logistics. Rudy's one of those guys who's been in the business since before computers. Started loading trucks when he was 18 and worked his way up to regional operations manager through pure grit and determination. He'd been trying to poach me for 2 years, sending me Christmas cards with little notes like doors always open if you get tired of working for amateurs. The thing about this industry is that results speak louder than diplomas. And my results have been speaking pretty damn loudly for the past 5 years. The Phoenix distribution network that Olive mentioned, that was my baby. A logistical nightmare that everyone said couldn't be done until I figured out how to cut shipping times by 30% and reduce costs by almost 20%. The Morrison contract that Charles was so worried about losing. I'd been the point person on that account for 3 years, built a relationship with their procurement team that went way beyond just vendor-client, people talk in this business. They know who's really doing the work and who's just taking credit for it. They know that Charles Alden inherited his company from his daddy and has been coasting on family money and political connections ever since. They know that the real brains behind Alden Ventures' recent success has been the guy who married the boss's daughter and never got the recognition he deserved. So, when I walked out of Charles's office with my dignity intact and my resignation letter delivered, I wasn't walking into the unknown. I was walking toward opportunity that had been waiting for me to grow a spine and reach for it. My phone buzzed before it even made it back to my desk. Text message from Olive. Heard through the grapevine that you might be exploring new opportunities. Coffee this afternoon? I've got something that might interest you. The grapevine. Jesus. News travels fast in this business. I hadn't even cleaned out my desk yet, and already people were talking. But that's the thing about having a reputation. When you've spent years doing good work, people notice when you become available. I texted her back. Coffee sounds great. 3 p.m. at Brewers. Perfect. And Marcus, bring your resume. While I was typing my response, my work phone rang. Rudy Marlowe's name popped up on the caller ID and I almost laughed out loud. Marcus. His grilly voice boomed through the receiver. Tell me it's true. Tell me you finally told that pompous-ass father-in-law of yours to shove it. News travels fast, I said, glancing around the office to see if anyone was listening. Jack was in Charles's office now, probably getting an emergency briefing on damage control, while the rest of the team pretended to work while obviously trying to figure out what all the shouting had been about. Faster than bad checks, my friend. So, what's your plan? Please tell me you're not going to waste time with one of those corporate headhunter, who will promise you the moon and deliver a pay cut. I'm exploring my options, I said, keeping it professional, even though part of me wanted to tell Rudy exactly what I thought about Charles and his whole nepotistic empire. Well, explore this. Westeen's opening a new Southwest division. We need someone who knows the territory, knows the players, and isn't afraid to get his hands dirty. Salary's negotiable, benefits are solid, and best of all, you'd be working for people who actually respect talent over family trees. I could hear Jack's voice through Charles's office door, high-pitched and nervous, probably asking what he was supposed to do about the Morrison renewal without me there to hold his hand. Part of me felt bad for the kid. He hadn't asked to be thrown into this mess. Hadn't asked to be the weapon Charles used to cut me down to size. But that was Charles's problem now, not mine. Send me the details, Rudy. I said, I'll take a look. Already in your inbox along with the contact info for our HR director, Marcus. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. This industry needs guys like you. Guys who actually know what they're doing instead of just talking a good game. Charles Alden just made the biggest mistake of his professional life, and his loss is going to be somebody else's gain. After I hung up, I sat at my desk for a minute, looking around at the office that had been my second home for 5 years. The motivational poster on the wall that said, "Teamwork makes the dream work." The coffee-stained carpet that maintenance never quite managed to clean properly. The view of the parking lot where I'd spent countless lunch breaks eating sandwiches in my car while working through vendor problems on my phone. I wasn't going to miss this place. But more importantly, I was starting to realize that this place was going to miss me a hell of a lot more than I was going to miss it. You know what they say about watching a train wreck? You can't look away even when you know it's going to be ugly as hell. That's what my last 2 weeks at Alden Ventures felt like. Except I wasn't just watching the wreck happen. I was living in the middle of it while trying to maintain some shred of professional dignity. I could have been petty about it. God knows I had every reason to be. I could have walked out that Friday afternoon and left Jack to figure out 5 years' worth of systems and relationships on his own. Could have let Charles deal with the fallout of promoting an inexperienced kid over the guy who actually knew how to run the operation. Part of me wanted to do exactly that. Wanted to watch the whole thing burn down from a safe distance while sipping a beer and saying, "I told you so." But here's the thing about being a professional. It's not something you can turn on and off like a light switch. It's either who you are or it isn't. And I've never been the kind of guy who can walk away from people who are counting on me, even when their boss is a backstabbing, who thinks family means blood and nothing else. The team I trained over the years, Janet from accounting, Mike from shipping, Sarah who handled client communications. They didn't deserve to get caught in the crossfire of Charles's nepotism experiment. These were good people who'd busted their asses alongside me, who'd stayed late when deadlines got tight and came in on weekends when emergencies popped up. They trusted me to have their backs, and I wasn't about to screw them over just because their boss had screwed me. And then there were the clients, companies like Morrison Industries and Westfield Manufacturing, who'd built relationships with me personally over the years, who called my direct line when they had problems because they knew I'd get things sorted out fast and right the first time. These weren't just account numbers on a spreadsheet. They were real businesses with real people depending on our services to keep their operations running smooth. So, I stayed and I worked my ass off for 2 weeks while watching Jack Monroe slowly realize that managing logistics operations isn't something you learn from textbooks and case studies. The kid tried. I'll give him that. He asked questions, took notes, even stayed late a couple nights trying to understand the vendor database I'd spent 3 years building from scratch. But there's a difference between understanding how something works and actually knowing how to make it work when everything goes sideways. Which brings me to the Portstone manufacturing disaster. Portstone had been one of our biggest accounts for 4 years. A reliable client who shipped heavy machinery parts across the Southwest and trusted us to coordinate everything from customs paperwork to final delivery. Their logistics manager, Tom Brennan, was old school, the kind of guy who valued relationships over contracts and expected you to answer your phone when he called, even if it was 6 p.m. on a Friday. Jack's first week flying solo. Tom calls with an emergency. 3 containers of critical parts sitting in Long Beach. Customs hold because of some paperwork snafu and Portstone assembly line scheduled to shut down Monday morning if those parts don't make it to Phoenix by Sunday night. This is the kind of crisis that happens maybe twice a year. The kind that separates the professionals from the pretenders. I'm at my desk, supposedly training Jack on quarterly reporting procedures when his phone rings. I watch him answer, see his face go pale as Tom explains the situation, watch him fumble through our customs broker contact list like he's never seen it before. Mr. Brennan, Jack says, his voice getting higher with each word. Let me check on that and get back to you. He hangs up and looks at me with pure panic in his eyes. Marcus, I need help. There's some problem with customs in Long Beach and this guy's talking about shutting down production lines and I don't even know who we use for customs clearance. I could have told him to figure it out himself. Could have reminded him that he's the director now. That this is exactly the kind of decision making he's getting paid the big bucks to handle. Instead, I pulled up the contact list, called our customs broker directly, and spent the next 4 hours coordinating with 3 different agencies to get those containers cleared and loaded onto emergency transport. By Sunday morning, the parts were in Phoenix and Portstone's assembly line started up right on schedule. Tom Brennan called Jack personally to thank him for pulling off another miracle, and Jack accepted the praise like he'd done anything more than hold the phone while I worked. But that was just the beginning. Over the next week, I watched Jack stumble through vendor negotiations he didn't understand, approve shipping routes that made no financial sense, and schedule deliveries that conflicted with driver availability. Every day brought a new crisis, and every day I found myself stepping in to clean up the mess before it became a disaster. The emergency protocols I developed over 5 years, who to call when shipments went missing, how to reroute deliveries around weather delays, which vendors could be trusted to handle rush orders. Jack had no clue about any of it. I started documenting everything, writing out step-by-step procedures for situations that used to be second nature to me, not because I wanted to help Jack succeed. Hell no. I did it because I could see the writing on the wall, could see that Alden Ventures was about to lose clients, and I didn't want the people I'd worked with to get blamed for management stupidity. Charles, meanwhile, was getting more desperate by the day. His emails went from politely asking me to make sure Jack has everything he needs to practically begging me to consider staying on in a consulting capacity to help with the transition. Each message was a little more frantic than the last, and I could practically smell the fear through my computer screen. The man who'd been so confident about Jack's potential 2 weeks ago was starting to realize that potential doesn't mean, when you've got 3 major accounts threatening to jump ship. And a nephew who thinks logistics management is something you can learn from YouTube videos. But I kept showing up, kept doing the work, kept making sure that when I walked out that door for the last time, no one could say I'd burned the place down on my way out. Because that's the difference between a professional and an amateur. Professionals clean up their messes, even when someone else made them. Tuesday morning of my final week, I'm sitting at my desk updating the vendor emergency contact list because apparently knowing who to call when, hits the fan isn't something they teach at Wharton. When Charles's secretary, Mrs. Rodriguez, appears next to my cubicle like a ghost materializing out of thin air. Mr. Hayes, she says in that careful tone she uses when Charles is having one of his moods. Mr. Alden would like to see you in his office when you have a moment. When you have a moment, that's corporate speak for a drop whatever you're doing and get your ass in here right now, but delivered with enough politeness that Charles can pretend he's being respectful. Mrs. Rodriguez has been Charles's secretary for 12 years, and she's got the diplomatic thing down to an art form. She knows exactly what kind of, storm has been brewing since I handed in my resignation. And the look in her eyes tells me she's rooting for me. Tell him I'll be right there, I say, saving my work and taking a deep breath. I've been expecting this conversation for days, watching Charles get more agitated as the reality of my departure sinks in. Yesterday, I caught him standing outside Jack's office just listening to the poor kid struggle through a phone call with one of our freight brokers, and the expression on Charles's face was pure panic, barely held in check. Charles's office looks different somehow when I walk in. Smaller, maybe, or just less impressive than it used to be. He's not behind his desk this time. Instead, he's sitting in one of the leather chairs he usually reserves for important clients, trying to look casual and friendly, like we're just 2 guys having a chat instead of employer and soon-to-be former employee. Marcus, he says, gesturing to the chair across from him with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Sit down, please. I think we need to talk. I sit, but I don't relax. I can smell desperation on him, like cheap cologne. And I know whatever's coming next is going to be some combination of manipulation, bribery, and emotional blackmail disguised as a business conversation. I've been thinking. He starts leaning forward with his hands clasped together like he's about to share some profound wisdom about your resignation, about the transition, about what's best for the company moving forward. And I think maybe we were a little hasty in how we handled the promotion situation. Hasty, like promoting your nephew over your son-in-law was some kind of innocent oversight instead of a calculated power play that he'd been planning for months. I'm listening, I say, keeping my voice neutral, even though part of me wants to laugh at whatever, he's about to try to sell me. What if we created a new position? He continues, warming up to his pitch like a used car salesman who thinks he's found the perfect sucker. Associate Director of Operations. You'd work alongside Jack, help him learn the ropes, but you'd have your own title, your own authority. Jack would be the director in name, but you'd both report directly to me. Think of it as co-management. Co-management. Jesus Christ. He actually said that with a straight face. Like, I'm supposed to be grateful for the opportunity to babysit his nephew while pretending we're equals. Like, slapping a fancy title on sandwich is going to make it taste better. And the salary? I ask. Because I might as well hear the whole ridiculous offer before I turn it down. 15% increase, he says quickly, like he's been expecting that question. Plus performance bonuses tied to departmental efficiency metrics. And of course, when Jack's ready to move up to regional management, which could be sooner than you think, the director position would naturally be yours. Naturally, right? Because Charles Alden has such a stellar track record of promoting based on merit instead of bloodlines. I let the silence stretch out between us, watching him squirm in his expensive chair while he waits for my response. He's trying to read my face, trying to figure out if his little bribe is working, if he's found the right combination of money and promises to make me forget about 5 years of being overlooked and undervalued. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I finally say, leaning back in my chair. You want me to stay here and train your nephew to do the job I should have gotten in the first place while pretending that we're somehow equal partners in this arrangement. It's not about pretending, Marcus. It's about building a stronger management team, creating opportunities for growth. Charles, I interrupt, and something in my voice makes him stop talking. I'm not going to babysit your nephew while he figures out how to do my job. I'm not going to smile and nod while you call it co-management and pretend like this is some kind of promotion instead of what it really is. You panicking because you realize Jack can't handle what you've given him. His face starts to rein, that familiar flush creeping up from his collar. This is a generous offer, Marcus. Damn generous considering the position you're putting us in by leaving during such a critical period. Critical period. Like my leaving is the problem instead of his decision to promote an unqualified kid over someone who's been carrying the department for 5 years. What about Belle? He tries again, switching tactics like a politician who's lost the crowd. What about Sophia? This affects them, too. You know, your family's security, your daughter's college fund. And there it is. The guilt trip I've been waiting for. The emotional manipulation disguised as concern for my family's welfare. He's going to make this about my responsibilities as a husband and father, like staying in a job where I'm treated like garbage is somehow the noble thing to do. You're right, I say. Standing up from my chair. This does affect my family. It affects what kind of example I set for my daughter about self-respect and standing up for yourself. It affects whether my wife continues to watch me come home every day a little more beaten down than the day before. Charles stands too, probably thinking he can physically intimidate me into changing my mind. You'll hurt your family with this decision. Marcus, you'll hurt people who care about you. I look at him. Really look at him. This man who married off his daughter to secure a loyal employee who spent 5 years taking credit for my work while keeping me grateful for scraps from his table. This man who thinks loyalty is a one-way street that only flows uphill. No, Charles, I say, walking toward his door. You did that the day you chose nepotism over merit. You hurt my family when you decided that Jack's last name was more important than my 5 years of dedication. And you know what the really sad part is? You still don't get it. I pause at his doorway and look back at him one last time. I'm not leaving because I'm angry about the promotion. I'm leaving because I finally realized what you really think of me and I'm not willing to accept that anymore. As I walk back to my desk, I can hear him calling my name, but I don't turn around. Some bridges are meant to be burned, and this one's been overdue for a long time. The Horizon Tech building sits in the heart of downtown, Like a gleaming monument to what happens when a company actually invests in its future instead of coasting on daddy's money and political connections. 43 floors of steel and glass reaching toward the sky with those massive silver doors at the entrance that reflect the morning sun like mirrors. Standing on the sidewalk outside, adjusting my tie for the third time in 2 minutes, I can't help but think about the contrast with Alden Ventures' tired old office building with its stained carpet and flickering fluorescent lights. My interview with Carmen is scheduled for 10 a.m. and I'm here 20 minutes early because that's what professionals do. They show up prepared, on time, and ready to prove their worth. Not like Jack Monroe, who probably still needs GPS to find the bathroom in his own office building. The lobby is all polished marble and modern art with a security desk manned by guys who look like they actually know what they're doing instead of just collecting paychecks. I give my name to the receptionist, a sharp-looking woman who greets me with a genuine smile instead of the barely concealed boredom I've gotten used to at Charles's place. "Mr. Hayes," she says, checking her computer screen. "Ms. Ease is ready for you. Take the express elevator to the 38th floor. Her assistant will meet you there." The elevator moves so smoothly, I barely feel it climbing. And when the doors open on 38, I'm looking at a workspace that actually looks like it belongs in the 21st century. Open floor plans that encourage collaboration. Natural light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. People who look like they enjoy coming to work instead of counting down the hours until 5 o'clock. Carmen E's office overlooks the river. And she's standing at the window when her assistant shows me in. She turns around with a smile that reaches her eyes, extending her hand for a firm handshake that tells me everything I need to know about how she does business. "Marcus," she says, gesturing toward a conference table by the window instead of making me sit across from her desk like some kind of supplicant. "Great to finally meet in person. I've been following your work at Alden Ventures for years. Following my work, not Charles's work, not the company's work, but mine specifically. It's been so long since someone recognized my individual contributions that I almost don't know how to respond. The Phoenix distribution network was particularly impressive," she continues, settling into her chair with a coffee mug that says, "World's okay, boss." The kind of self-deprecating humor that Charles would never understand. Cutting shipping times by 30% while reducing costs. That's the kind of innovative thinking we need here at Horizon Tech. We talk for an hour about logistics challenges, about the changing landscape of supply chain management, about the difference between companies that embrace change and companies that resist it until they're forced to adapt or die. Carmen doesn't just ask about my experience. She asks about my vision, my ideas for improving efficiency, my thoughts on where the industry is heading. "Here's the thing, Marcus," she says, leaning forward with the kind of intensity that tells me she's about to get serious. "We're expanding our Southwest operations, new facility in Phoenix, direct partnerships with manufacturers in Mexico, the whole 9 yards. We need someone who understands the territory, who has the relationships and the expertise to make it work from day one." "What kind of position are we talking about?" I ask, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. "Lead Director of Southwest Operations," she says without hesitation. "Your own team, your own budget, full authority to structure things however you think works best. No co-management, no training your replacement. Just you running the show the way you know it should be run." The salary she mentions makes my head spin. 40% higher than what Charles was paying me. Plus performance bonuses that could push it even higher. Better health insurance, better retirement plan, 3 weeks paid vacation starting immediately instead of the 5-day maximum Charles allowed. But the real selling point isn't the money. Though God knows that doesn't hurt. It's the respect. It's Carmen talking to me like I'm a professional whose opinion matters, like I'm someone whose expertise is valued instead of just tolerated. "I have to ask," Carmen says, her expression getting more serious. "Why are you leaving Alden Ventures? 5 years is a long time to walk away from, especially when you've built something as successful as that Phoenix network." I could give her the diplomatic answer. Something about seeking new challenges and opportunities for growth. But Carmen strikes me as someone who appreciates honesty, someone who's dealt with enough to recognize it when she hears it. "Charles Alden promoted his nephew over me. I say simply, kid's got an MBA from Wharton and 3 months of experience. I've got 5 years of results and a track record of success. Family connections won the day." Carmen nods like she's heard this story before, like she knows exactly how the old boys network operates and why companies like Alden Ventures keep losing talent to places like Horizon Tech. "Their loss," she says, standing up and extending her hand again. "Welcome to Horizon Tech, Marcus. When can you start?" 2 weeks later, I'm cleaning out my desk at Alden Ventures for the last time, packing up 5 years of memories and frustrations into a cardboard box that doesn't seem nearly big enough to hold everything I'm leaving behind. Jack avoids eye contact when he walks past, probably still trying to figure out how to handle the Morrison account renewal without me there to hold his hand. Charles hasn't spoken to me since our last conversation in his office, which suits me just fine. I leave my security badge on Charles's desk along with a folder containing detailed instructions for every major account, emergency contact numbers, and step-by-step procedures for handling the kind of crisis that Jack will inevitably face. Not because I owe Charles anything, but because the people who work here, the ones who didn't choose their boss, deserve better than to watch everything fall apart because of one man's pride and stupidity. Walking out through those glass doors for the last time, carrying my box of personal items and my head held high. I don't look back. Tomorrow morning, I start fresh at Horizon Tech, working for people who value competence over connections, results over relationships. For the first time in 5 years, I'm actually excited about going to work. 6 months into my new life at Horizon Tech, I'm sitting in my corner office, my actual corner office with windows that look out over the mountains instead of a parking lot. When Carmen walks in carrying a magazine with a grin that tells me she's got news. "Take a look at this," she says, dropping the latest issue of Southwest Business Journal on my desk like it's Christmas morning. The cover story hits me like a punch to the gut, except instead of pain, it's pure satisfaction flowing through my veins. There's Charles Alden's face looking about 10 years older than when I left under a headline that reads, "Alden Ventures loses 60% of major clients. Following management shakeup and nepotism allegations." I flip through the article and it's even better than the headline promised. Portstone Manufacturing terminated their contract after what the article diplomatically calls service delivery failures. But what I know was probably Jack screwing up another emergency shipment. Lancaster Group followed suit 3 weeks later, citing concerns about operational competency. Delmeyer Heavy Industries, the account I'd personally nursed back to health after their previous logistics provider screwed them over, jumped ship to our biggest competitor with a statement about seeking more experienced management. The article quotes an unnamed industry source saying, "When you promote family over talent, this is what happens." Marcus Hayes was the operational backbone of that company, and losing him exposed just how thin their actual expertise really was. "Gets better," Carmen says, settling into the chair across from my desk. Keep reading. The financial details are brutal. Stock price down 40%, layoffs across 3 departments, and a board of directors that's apparently decided Charles's leadership style isn't working out so well anymore. The article mentions that Charles stepped down to pursue other opportunities, which is corporate speak for, got his ass fired by people who care more about profits than family loyalty. But the rail kicker is buried in the last paragraph. Former regional director Jack Monroe, nephew of company founder Charles Alden, resigned his position last month to pursue additional education opportunities. Sources close to the company suggest Monroe's departure was related to operational difficulties following the loss of key personnel. Additional education opportunities. The kid went back to school, probably to learn what he should have known before Charles handed him a job he wasn't qualified for. Part of me feels bad for Jack. He never asked to be thrown into that mess. Never asked to be the weapon Charles used to cut me down. But that's what happens when family politics collide with business reality. So, what's the word on the street? I ask Carmen, though I'm pretty sure I already know the answer. Charles is scrambling to sell off assets and avoid lawsuits from investors who feel like they were misled about the company's stability. Word is he might lose the family compound in Scottsdale if things keep going south. Meanwhile, you've increased our Southwest Division's efficiency by 25% and landed 3 major contracts that your old competitors would kill for. I lean back in my chair, looking out at those mountains and thinking about how different my life is now. No more walking on eggshells around a boss who thinks I should be grateful for scraps. No more watching unqualified people get promoted over me because of whose blood runs in their veins. No more coming home exhausted from fighting battles I was never allowed to win. Carmen's right about the numbers. Our Southwest operations are crushing it. And it's not because I'm some kind of genius. It's because I'm finally working for people who let me do my job without interference, who judge results instead of resumes. Who understand that trust and leadership can't be inherited like furniture. Charles never figured that out and now he's paying the price. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor after all. A year and 3 months after walking out of Alden Ventures, I'm grabbing breakfast at Mickey's Diner near Sky Harbor Airport before catching a flight back to headquarters when I spot a familiar figure hunched over a corner booth. Jack Monroe sits alone with a cup of coffee and a textbook that's got supply chain management principles and practices written across the cover in bold letters. The kid looks different, older somehow. Like the past year, has taught him things they don't cover in business school. His expensive suits have been replaced by jeans and a flannel shirt. And there's something in his posture that wasn't there before. Humility, maybe, Or just the weight of understanding how badly he'd screwed up. I could walk right past him, pretend I didn't see him, catch my flight, and get back to my successful new life without looking backward. But something about the way he's studying that textbook, like his life depends on learning every word, makes me stop. Mind if I sit? I ask, gesturing to the empty side of his booth. Jack looks up, and for a second, I think he's going to bolt for the door, but then he closes the book and gives me a tired smile that's got more maturity in it than anything I ever saw when he was playing director. "Marcus," he says, sliding the textbook to one side. "I wondered when I might run into you. Phoenix isn't that big a town in our business." I signal the waitress for coffee and settle into the booth across from him. Up close, I can see the changes even clearer. The cocky confidence is gone, replaced by something that looks like genuine self-awareness. "How's the studying going?" I ask, nodding toward the textbook. Jack laughs, but it's not bitter. "Harder than I thought it would be. Turns out there's a lot they don't teach you in general business classes about actually managing logistics operations." "Who knew? Planning to get back into it eventually." "Yeah, but the right way this time from the ground up, learning the business instead of just inheriting a title I never earned." He takes a sip of his coffee and looks me straight in the eye. "I deserve none of it, Marcus. The promotion, the office, the responsibility, none of it. But you still helped me when everything started falling apart. I won't forget that." The waitress brings my coffee and I add cream while thinking about how to respond. The truth is, I did help him even when I could have let him drown. Not because I liked him or thought he deserved it, but because that's who I am. "You got thrown into a game you weren't ready for," I tell him. "Charles put you in an impossible situation and expected you to succeed without the tools or knowledge to make it work. That wasn't all yo." "Maybe not all of it," Jack says. "But I should have known better. Should have told Uncle Charles the first needed more time, more training, more everything before taking on that kind of responsibility. Pride, I guess. I wanted to prove I could handle it. And now I know that wanting something and being ready for it are two completely different things. I'm working for a small freight company in Tucson, learning how trucks actually get loaded and what happens when deliveries go wrong, making about a third of what I was making at Alden Ventures. And I've never been happier to clock in every morning. I can respect that. There's something to be said for a guy who's willing to admit his mistakes and start over the hard way." "What about Charles?" I ask, though I'm not sure I really want to know. Jack's expression darkens a little. "Uncle Charles isn't talking to me much these days. Last I heard, he was trying to sell the business to avoid bankruptcy, but there aren't many buyers interested in a company that's lost most of its major accounts. Funny how things work out." We sit in comfortable silence for a while. Two guys who've been through the same storm from different sides. Jack's not the enemy anymore. Hell, he never really was. He was just a pawn in Charles's game. A weapon used against me that ended up backfiring spectacularly. When the check comes, I grab it before Jack can protest. "Good luck with the studying," I tell him as we head toward the parking lot. "And Jack, next time someone offers you a job you're not ready for, have the guts to say no." He nods, and I can see he means it. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way.